I'm Cadence Dubious. This is Busybody Podcast, and I'm so excited today to welcome my guest who also interviewed me recently for an Instagram Live, and we just couldn't stop talking, so why should we stop talking? Um, Welcome, Michelle. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. And that was so much fun, our Instagram Live. My name is Michelle Osbourne, aka Uncomfortable Bliss on Instagram and TikTok. And I don't know, I just have a lot of fun. I think I've been labeled a body positive advocate, although I never started off to be that way. And so I just try to help people with their confidence by giving zero fucks and just living their life and doing what they do. So that's kind of a broad overview of who I am.
Well, how did you start that? And I'm curious, did you start on Instagram or TikTok? Just
I actually, well, how could I say this? So I had an Instagram account probably started in about 2012 or something, but I didn't do anything with it. I posted the odd picture of me and my friend and stuff, and I didn't know why people used Instagram. So I went off of it. It really started a few years ago, I would say 2020, when the pandemic started and the George Floyd incident happened, and the whole world was in chaos. And that's when I started it. And I actually really had a hard time getting through the George Floyd incident. I locked myself in my house for about a week and did not want to talk to anybody. And it was actually therapeutic for me to start talking about what I really felt passionate about, because I was a very quiet person for a lot of my life. I was afraid of feeling judged about my opinions about stuff. And I actually found TikTok in January of 2020. I went on it. I thought it was ridiculous. And I thought, oh my God, this is for like teenagers. Why would anyone go on this? And then I had this person on IG named Gary V that I follow a lot. And he said, if you are a business person, if you have something to say, you should be on TikTok. So I went back on and I said, okay, let me watch it for a little bit and see why people think this is so great. And I silently watched it for probably about 2 or 3 months. And then I said, this is why. And almost immediately when I went on it, and I immediately started talking about body image, being a larger person, because it had affected me my whole life. Almost immediately, people gravitated towards me, and it just really took off from there. And then I would say about a year and a half later, I started using my Instagram account. So I didn't start really using my Instagram account till I would say about a year and a half ago to 2 years ago maximum.
That's amazing.
And then that started to take off because I kind of just started using that platform like my TikTok platform. And that's kind of just how it started. It really started from the pandemic and me not wanting to keep my mouth shut anymore, and went off from there.
Well, I think that's what's really interesting about your account is that it's very multifaceted. You are representing not just a larger body, just living life, which is like a really wonderful aspect of your account, like doing very regular things. But you're also showing a non-white body, a queer person in a relationship with a family, with a child. Like there's so much depth to it. And all your posts are very like casual. They're very just like, here we are doing our thing. I think a lot of the power of them is you're not beating anyone over the head. You're just like, oh, here's me and my partner just doing our morning thing. Literally just representing, literally just showing that exists, basically.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that. I think you're the first person who's ever said that to me. And I really appreciate it, because when I first started using my platform, it was not that at all. It was very more showy. I didn't talk at all. I had a hard time talking because I didn't like the sound of my voice. I felt like I couldn't talk naturally. And I was like, if I can't talk naturally, I don't want to talk. So it took me, I would say, minimum of 2 years before I actually started talking. And I didn't start getting really relaxed about just my family life and bringing, my partner and everything into it, I would say till about a year and a half ago, let's say. And so I was really guarded at the beginning because I kind of didn't know what I was doing.
Sure.
I just knew people liked, me dancing and doing all these things. And I got to a point in my life, it was in early 2002 when I was going through a transition, and I was like, what does this all mean? Like, is what I'm doing really matter? Because I recognize that people actually wanted to hear my opinions more than see me dance. And I wanted to talk more than dance and dress up. I didn't want to do the theatrics anymore. I said, I'm just going to kind of be me and do my life. And I think more now than ever, people want to have someone they can connect with, and people connect with just ordinary, everyday people. And so it's actually been difficult for me to make that transition because I was nervous to hear my voice. And now it's like, I can't stop talking. Now I just talk, like I just pick up the camera. I'm like, let's have a conversation. Let's have a good time. And so I appreciate you saying that, because it wasn't natural for me at the beginning. Actually, it took me a couple of years before I could do that.
That's wild, because you appear so natural and such an easy speaker, and obviously, and I hope it's obvious, you have a beautiful voice. And the feedback that I got from the Instagram live we did, everyone was like, oh my God, she's such an amazing speaker. She's such a natural interviewer. What a lovely person, what, like all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, I know. Why does she not have her own show? Like I would just listen to you talk to people all the time. But that just goes to show how we have these stories about ourselves and these perceptions of ourselves. And we hear and see things that no one else is hearing and seeing, even in the social media world where everyone's ready to point out all your mistakes and stuff. That's amazing. Also, I imagine you had to have, your partner had to be on board, being, you do have a lot of followers. It's a whole thing to be out there.
Yeah. And I just actually did a podcast with CBC. And so I don't know if you know CBC. It's the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. It's the big media. It's like, I don't know, NBC, except it's Canadian. And so we just did an interview with them about our relationship, how we met and how we stay connected, and Keep It Hot was their title. And the interesting thing is that when she first met me, she met me on IG.
Oh, right? Wow.
On Instagram. She DM'd me because a friend of hers was posting my videos all the time. She was like, who is this person that my friend is posting all the time? And then there was a video that she really connected with, and she started following me, and then she DM'd me, and I ignored her because I get a lot of DMs. And when you're a private account, then I get suspicious. And then the second I don't know what happened to the DM, and then she DM'd me again, and she said, what does your name mean? Uncomfortable Bliss. And that, I was like, that's interesting, because no one ever asked me that question before. And then so I replied to her with a voice message, and that's kind of how it began. But I said to her that when we started to get serious, that I said, I'm a content creator. I'm online. And so you have to be okay with that. You don't have to be a part of the videos. You don't have to do
sure.
You have to be okay knowing that sometimes if I'm on my phone, it's not just because I'm on my phone, I'm actually working. Or if I need to go somewhere for a little bit, I'm actually working. And so not everybody can be with a content creator. It can be tricky. And so I let her come into videos when she wants to. There's some times I say to her, "Ooh, I have this fun thing. You want to just go over here and have some fun?" Sometimes she'll be like, "No, I'm not interested. Sure. Today's not the day." And so I totally respect that. I don't curate my platform to include her. I only include her when she feels the vibe. And sometimes she'll be like, "Hey, let's go dance to this song." And I'll be like, "Perfect." And then I'll take it. But most of the time she's like, it's not her. She's not a social media person at all.
Sure, yeah. Yeah.
She's not.
I'm laughing too, because that's a recurring argument with my partner and I, because I have started to develop much more content since we were in a relationship. So I didn't start doing that. And now it's a thing of me disappearing on my phone and being like, I'm working. I know it looks like I'm just staring at my phone.
It's true. I actually had to have a serious conversation with her about it because my past partner before her didn't like it.
Sure.
And it was at the beginning of me trying to figure out this internet thing. I had developed this blog called 40 by 40. And I really wanted to get it going when I turned 40. I had to do 40 things that I always wanted to do by the time I turned 40. And I
Oh, that's
started at
awesome.
39. That partner did not like that I was trying to get it going and spending so much
Mm,
time. And so I said it was a project of mine that was actually really quite, it didn't take a lot of time, but I knew that if I had another partner, they had to understand that I put a lot of energy into this because actually I'm not sure I've ever been as dedicated to something as much as I am to this. And
mm,
I think the reason why is because I am so passionate about what I'm talking about, and I've never been passionate about this in my life, anything
mm.
else like this in my life. And so it's really important to me to really be authentic and talk to people like I'm just talking to my girlfriends, because if I'm not that way, I cannot create content. I just can't be anyone else but me anymore. I have no energy to
Mm,
be anything else but me. And so I think that's why my content reflects that. And that's why you're going to get me with makeup on sometimes and sometimes not. Sometimes
for
I'm going to
real.
swear because I feel like swearing and sometimes I'm not. And so my partner really had to understand that, and she got it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I resonate with that because it's also like it's an energy that you have to have. I feel like
Yeah.
when you're putting something out and you actually have to kind of protect that energy, I don't want to say it's a performance because that can make it sound like it's fake, but for anyone who performs, um, you have to be in a vibe. You have to be like in a flow. And so you have
Absolutely.
to create space for that, or else it's just a slog. And there are definitely days where I'm struggling to post because I'm just like not in it today. I'm just not in
It's
it.
hard.
So,
And you know what? And I used to always be, at the beginning, you get addicted to the numbers. Okay, how many followers
right.
do I have now? How many people like this post? And then it got to a point where it wasn't fun for me anymore. And I almost started to quit because I forgot about why I actually started the
Right.
platform. And it was so easy to be sucked into the glitz, and it's not glamorous, trust me,
Right.
because we don't get paid for 99% of this shit. And so
But it's that dopamine
um,
hit. It's that
it's
dopamine
true,
hit.
right? It really is. I don't think people realize that. People who consume our content don't realize that most of this stuff we don't get paid for. So,
No.
um, and so when I got to a point where I started hating it, I got off for a while because you're nervous. Your audience, there's a lot of audience that don't want you to get off. Like they think that,
Mm-hmm.
you need to be there 24 hours, 7 days a week. And if you go for a little bit, then they leave because you're not giving them what they need anymore.
Right.
And I had to learn to be okay with that, because being on social media all the time is tough when it is your business.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if
Mm-hmm.
you're just, a watcher who likes to watch it, you can shut it down at any time. But when it's your business, it takes a toll. And so it got to a point where I was just watching numbers too much, and I was just trying, and I had to stop
Mm,
because I wasn't liking it anymore. And that's when people probably noticed the transition of what I did. I wasn't coming on dressed up anymore. I
mm,
wasn't putting on makeup anymore. I just started to say, Michelle, do what you wanted to do when you first started this and have fun. Everything else, people will come and go regardless of what you post, because I come and go off people's platforms all the time.
right.
There was a time where it gave me what I needed, and then not so much anymore. So why would you expect for people to always want to stay? And
Right.
so when I let that go, that's when my platform started to grow even more. And that's when I started to enjoy doing it more.
Mm,
And
mm.
so I will continue to do it until I don't like doing it anymore.
Well, I also wanted to know, what does your handle mean, Uncomfortable Bliss?
Oh, so thank you for asking this question. My handle, I went through a really bad, I was in a partnership for about 12 years, married for 6 of those years. I went at the end of that partnership, I didn't think I was going to make it. It felt like a death. And I was like, how do I now go and live this life without this partner in this family that I built? And I went through a really rough time. And I remember standing on my balcony wanting to jump, thinking, there's no way I'm going to make it. And so I called up this more of an acquaintance who I knew was this kind of healer. And I texted them and I said, I'm on my balcony and I'm not sure if I'm going to make it. Can you call me? And he texted me right back and he's like, I don't have time now, but I'm going to tell you something. You're here for a reason. So I want you to get off the balcony and we're going to talk later. So I got off the balcony and went through the motions of my day. And he had a conversation with me and he said, listen, I want you to feel the pain. I want you to go through the pain. I don't want you to cover up with another partner, with sex, with alcohol, with drugs. And the only way you're going to do it is if you're uncomfortable. The only way you're going to get to the other side is if you're uncomfortable and you sit in it and you feel it. And so that's what I did. And I don't think if I didn't have that conversation, I probably would have filled it with something else so I didn't have to feel it. And what I realized after I really decided to sit in it, that there was bliss on the other side. So I use my name as a metaphor to say everybody needs to be in an uncomfortable state at some point in their life if they want to grow, if they want to change. The only way you're going to get to bliss is if you're uncomfortable. And so hence Uncomfortable Bliss began. And that's why I chose this name. And I think that's a lot of what my platform is about, is maybe, pushing those buttons on certain people so they feel a little bit like, oh, that hurt. I wanted to hear that, but I didn't need to hear that. But that's the only way you're going to get to where you really want to be, is the bliss. And that's why my name is that.
I couldn't agree with that more. I feel like I talk about that a lot with my clients, of just staying with discomfort, not running away from what we often will just call straight up pain, which is that's such a challenging word because so many people have different ways that they feel that, the way that expresses itself for them. And yeah, I really feel like we're here to grow. Like that's what I want to do in my life, is just grow, basically, more than achieve anything. And I don't know how else to do that except continue to be uncomfortable, over and over again, or put myself in situations that are challenging or frightening, or deal with whatever is in front of me that's disappointing, all the things, the grief, the sickness, the whatever that comes up in our lives that we don't have control over either.
Yeah. And I know that, I used to look at life like as goals. Okay, when I reach that, okay, then that will be great. My life will be great. And when I do that, that will be great. And I realized that once I accomplished certain goals, there was always something else. Right. So I almost don't like to make certain goals anymore. I just go through the journey of living. And, I always tell people I don't make New Year's resolutions anymore. I choose words for the year now. And so next year, my word is consistency. I always tell my clients to say, successful people are not the best at everything. They're not the prettiest. They're not the most talented, but the most successful people are consistent.
100%.
And so I'm trying to apply that not just to my business, but to all areas of my life, to be consistent so I can grow and be uncomfortable and be successful, whatever that means for me in my life.
Well, I know you do coaching. How did that begin? Did that begin simultaneously? And who are your clients and what are you coaching?
So actually coaching had nothing to do with my social media platform. Like, by profession, my background is communications and marketing. And so I started a business, a communications studio, Michelle Osbourne & Co., for small businesses, primarily for marginalized communities who wanted to be themselves and use their own voice in their business. So I teach them how to do that. I help them put together communication plans. Some people just want coaching. Some people are like, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you put a plan together for me?
Mm.
And that started not 2 years ago, the end of 2021, when I was a literacy professional, and I'm a literacy professional in Quebec City. And so I decided that I was not going to do that anymore. I really wanted to focus on coaching people and helping people with their small business and learning how to use their authentic voice through their business without thinking they had to, go with the status quo. So, and then, the people I used to work for literacy organization called me back. And so I have all these different facets of my business. I still do literacy work.
Mm.
I do coaching now very little because I realized that coaching takes a lot of time and a lot of work. And so I'm actually in the process of rebranding how I coach instead of in doing it for groups rather just for single people.
That's a great
Because
idea.
it just, as my platform grew and I was working with different brands, I found I didn't have a lot of time. So I had to sit with myself and say, Michelle, what do you want to do more? Do you want to grow your brand and do stuff for yourself? Or do you want to just actually help other people? So I would say probably 80% of myself now is doing my own brand and collaborating with people. And then 20% is now coaching people. And I only coach people who are actually really serious about it. Because what I
Yeah.
also found was people would sign up to coach with me and then they'd be like, oh, I forgot about our meeting, or oh, cancel, and which comes with the territory, to be honest with you. But I had to decide within myself, A, can you make a living off of living a life like that? And B, do you want to always, I had clients who'd be like, waking up in bed and then they come with a
Right.
new idea. And then so it's actually not beneficial for them either to do this. You're wasting your money on me if every time you talk to me, you have a new business venture, but you're not focused on the first one that you contacted me about. So I had to choose me and decide which one I wanted to do more. So I only hold on to, like, I would say no more than 5 people maximum, and the rest I work on my own business for myself.
That's yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's one of the reasons I don't want to teach in person again.
Yeah.
Simply because the travel time and then people late cancel,
Yeah.
day of all this stuff. And boy, I spent so many hours just laying around my studio,
Yeah.
stretching, doing a few emails and stuff. And now if that happens, I'm home. I can just have a snack, take the dogs for a walk, whatever. It's such a huge difference in terms of my own livelihood. And people are always like, oh, are you gonna do in person? And I'm like, you don't realize that so much of providing a
Yeah.
service to
Yeah.
individuals is just waiting around and missed appointments and all that kind of stuff. um yeah. Given the
And
option.
I also realized as a entrepreneur is that, I always felt like, I had to be known for one thing, but I also learned from the pandemic that you need multiple sources of income. So I started thinking of ways to get income doing things that I love to do, whether it is, putting together a manual online for people that makes money in your sleep while you're
Mm-hmm.
sleeping. So I said, how can I still do what I love to do without always having to have a coaching meeting or a
Right.
workshop? And so that's actually what I'm doing a lot of work on now, because I might not want to be online and do IG and TikTok for in the next, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years.
Right.
So my actual goal for next year is to do a lot more public speaking in person and to really have the things that I'm passionate about, put them into tangible things that can make an income for me where I'm not always having to meet with a client or something like that.
Right. That's so smart. um with your platform and the things that you're showing people, it reminded me of something that we said, and it ties into the uncomfortable bliss metaphor. I think just when we were chatting, when we first met, you said being happy is hard work, and part of what I'm hearing is you're constantly making these choices towards your own bliss, literally, and what's best supporting you. Can you speak a little bit about that? Because I see that also reflected in your content. I think that's part of the magic of like the very regular things that you show. It's just, it's, I think what's kind of interesting about social media is I feel like when it started, it was very aspirational. Here's this person doing like a split on a cliff or something.
Yeah.
It was all really like drama, and it didn't feel very possible to enter into, and certainly my old Instagram is very just like random, but as it's really proliferated and there's TikTok and all these things, and so many different kinds of people are on, this real authentic everyday kind of brand sort of has emerged, which I agree, I think really resonates with people because I've never been one who follows the person who's doing handstands on the cliff or whatever. I don't really, that's only exciting for so long. But I follow plenty of people who are just cooking in their kitchen or, whatever. So you seem to really be from a few different places modeling this kind of choice towards bliss all the time, which is effort because the world that we live in is really always pushing us towards, production over everything else, be anything but yourself. And you said that when you were beginning to make this transition into really being in your own voice, you were worried about exposing those different parts of yourself to the public in that way. Can you speak a little bit about how that's been? Because I know you also told me that when you first started getting haters, you were like, "Oh, I guess I really made it now."
Because I wasn't getting any hate. And I was like, and I thought, as a body positive content creator, when you show your body and stuff like that, some of the really popular ones, they got, they were getting lots of hate. And I'm like, and I thought, is it good that I don't get hate or is it bad that I don't get hate? And then I remember my first hate and I was like, look, this is good. I can reply. I always tell people like, the trolls, although, we don't need them and we don't want them, they're also my best content sometimes and learning opportunities because I use their comment as learning opportunities. And I think it's great. They don't realize it. They don't realize that their comments are actually pushing my content for people to watch me more. They don't get it. So I think in terms of kind of how natural I've been on my platform, like I said, earlier last year, I just went through this period where I just felt like I couldn't be anything else but me. I didn't want to do anything anymore on my platform to see, okay, well, I think people like this the most, so I'm going to do that for them the most. It's really interesting. It's really a fine balance. You want to make sure that your audience gets what they're coming for, but you also want to make sure you are liking what you're doing and that you are authentic to you. So there's a really fine balance with that. And it got to a point where I didn't want to, I wanted people to know more of me that was just beyond the body positivity. And I felt like I had so much more to talk about. And I'm just talking about this one area. And I felt like I've been through lots of stuff. And so instead of just, okay, let's put on some clothes and show you what you look like in this dress, which I don't resonate with. I think fashion creators are awesome and great, and I get clothes from them all the time. But I knew really early on that wasn't me. And I've always had people ask me, can you do more fashion? And I'm just like, it's just not me. I don't care about it that much, right? Yeah. So I just went through a point in my life where is what I do matters. And so every time I create content, every time I talk about my life, I'm really intentional with learning how to be happy, because I think people think that happiness, for some people, it just is. And for other people, it just isn't. And so when I left my marriage, it's probably a decade ago now, I had to be really intentional to create happiness in my life. And what did that look like? That looked like moving my body a lot, change my mental state a lot. It meant I decided to totally change my wardrobe from wearing black all the time because I like black. But then I put color in it all of a sudden because I said, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like, I feel like I need to feel some joy in a different way. It meant, intentionally spending time with myself, sitting at restaurants by myself,
Mm-hmm.
going traveling by myself, doing things that made me feel uncomfortable, but those were life-changing moments of sitting in it by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so even today, I'm really intentional about my happiness because I realize that it actually takes work. When I used to think some people were just happy and they were just that way, and it's not. So, one of the reasons why I just try to show my everyday life, and that does not mean I don't have sad moments. I think sometimes people think that, Michelle, you're always happy, you're always happy. Yeah, for the most part, I'm happy in my life, but I do have sad moments. I just don't stay in them like I used to stay in them. And I like to try to be more victorious than a victim.
Mm-hmm.
And really try to see the good in things or the positive sides of things. But I do take moments of sadness. I do have moments of depression. I just don't stay in them as long. And I'm very intentional with my happiness. And I'm very intentional with how I love my daughter. And I'm very intentional with how I love my partner. I don't just let it happen anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I really create my own happiness.
Is that something that you like? Is there something that you can point to where you were learning that? Are there practitioners you worked with? Is that something that just started to come up in yourself that you knew you could reorient in that way?
Um, I didn't work with anyone specifically, but what I did do was I started to learn about people's love languages.
Mm-hmm.
Someone said it to me years ago, and I thought it was like, okay, whatever, love language, whoever does that. And when my last relationship ended, let me backtrack. In my last relationship, my daughter's other mother, something really clicked with me. We were dating, and there were certain things she was doing towards me that I was just like, this feels weird. And she wasn't getting satisfied in certain areas with herself from me. And when we realized that I was loving her the way I like to be loved,
Mm-hmm.
and she was loving me the way she liked to be loved. And when we realized that's not how we like to be loved, and when we sat down and we talked about, okay, so actually, how do you like to be loved? Because I just assume that
Right.
you like the way I like it. That was clicked. And then I started reading about love languages. And then I really started to apply it in my current relationship. And very early on, I said, how do you like to be loved? Because I don't want to assume that I'm doing it right just because I think I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
And then she said, I like to, hers was quality time and personal touch. And, she could care less about gifts. And I said, well, mine are words of affirmation. And so when we both realize that that's how we love, we are both very intentional. My partner likes personal time. Perfect. I'm not going to buy her a gift. Rather, I'm going to buy, 2 ways away, a 2-night getaway somewhere so
Right.
she can have the quality time that she appreciates more than a bag or a watch or something like
Right.
that. And so it really started when I clicked in my first relationship, my past relationship with my daughter's mother, that we weren't loving each other how we wanted to be loved. And then later on, funny enough, I still didn't apply it to that relationship. But as I moved into this one, I realized that I needed to be more intentional, and it's been a game changer, actually. Yeah.
All that communication stuff is amazing. I did nonviolent communication. It's called NVC. It's kind of, I don't know, I always want to say it's like a little old fashioned just because I think it was like developed in the 60s or 70s or something. And I got introduced to it through a friend of mine who was having real anger management issues.
Mm.
And she literally saw a flyer for it and was just like, I think I need that. She'd literally gotten thrown out of a cab on the Williamsburg Bridge for New Yorkers, that the cab driver threw her out because she was screaming. I mean, she really had a problem. And I saw her life transform in 3 years of really going to workshops and working, like doing all these things. So I did a retreat with her right when I was feeling really like just oppressed by the business I had created. I was only like 2 years into my business. I definitely was in a relationship that was not very healthy, and family dynamics that weren't good, all this stuff. And I must have been like about 30, 31, something like that. And I remember going to that thing being like, I have, like, this is my last hope. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to make life better. Like, everything feels hard. Everything is a struggle. Nothing seems to just, there's no ease, there's no flow. And NVC is all about learning what your needs are, and then so that you can hear what other people's needs are. And you start by just literally learning how to scan yourself. What am I feeling right now? What do I need right now? It literally taught me things like, I would notice I'd be sitting on the subway cold with a sweatshirt in my bag. And I'm like, why am I not putting my sweatshirt on? Just like these weird patterns that you get into where we just ignore our own needs all the time. And then you're cold and uncomfortable. So now you're snapping at your friend who's with, you know what I mean? It's like there's this domino that always happens. And that was just huge for me. You know, that relationship ended, like all these, it started all these, because I started asking for what I needed.
Yeah.
But it also means that it's very similar to all the love language stuff, because you start to realize like what really affects you, you know, how do you speak to other people, and it opens you to be able to hear that from other people. And I've also done the love language stuff, which is fun. And because of that, I always tell my partner when I buy him grapes. He definitely, he likes, you know, he likes the verbal acknowledgement. He likes receiving things, and I don't eat grapes very much, but when I buy them I say, just want you to know I bought these for you.
Well, you know, it's really interesting what you were talking about, because another thing that I think really helps, and I talk to people about a lot, is learn about emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
I went to a conference years and years ago, and they had a session about emotional intelligence, and I had no idea what this was. And I thought, this sounds interesting. And that actually was life transforming for me in terms of how to navigate my relationships with people, not just my personal relationships, but my work relationships. I was one of those people where people thought I'm sure thought people I had anger problems, or I was just a bitch. I was actually just extremely depressed and didn't know how to communicate well. And when I learned about emotional intelligence, it was a life changer to me as well. So I would say learning love languages and about emotional intelligence have been really big factors in my life that have helped me navigate my relationships in ways that I never thought possible.
Yeah, I think these are things that we just don't get taught, right? Like if you don't learn that from your own parents, and really who does?
No.
Then you are just out there kind of, you know, afloat on the ocean of life with very few skills, and so few people really have those skills. And then often we draw other people that have our same lacking skills, and then you just kind of replay things together. And that is the grist of life, is our emotions and our experiences every day. Is that something that you talk to with your coaching clients? Talk about with your coaching clients?
All the time. Because I think people think they're going to come to me and only get their ideas about their business. And actually, a lot of these sessions turn into therapy sessions, because running your business is more than your product or service. It's probably 80% of learning how to be confident, learning how to navigate the ups and downs of it. Because just because you think you have a good product or service, and everyone thinks they have a great product or service, and it could be, it's a learning about how to communicate that to the right people. And so they find really frustrated in the ups and downs of it. Your personal life comes into play, because life is life. And so a lot of my business becomes about talking to them about emotional intelligence and learning them, talking to them about navigating the ebbs and flows of it all. And I would say most of the time it's about that. It's like 20% about their business, the actual product or service that they're offering, because they're a pro at their product or service, right, but it's the other stuff that they have trouble navigating.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that actually makes me think about the haters, and we spoke about this a little bit at some point. I find it, I also have gotten some pushback on my post, and I always wondered how I would feel getting like kind of a really direct criticism. But I have to say, it's very obvious these are not very emotionally mature people.
It really
and
is. It really is.
and it's like it's so obviously like a very knee-jerk, very emotional response, which
Yeah.
actually makes it very easy to not listen to, which is actually why it's helpful to be emotionally intelligent, because if you're just screaming at your loved one, they really can't hear you. That's something that is part of nonviolent communication. Actually, it's often like the louder you're speaking, the less someone can hear you. If you're
Yeah.
screaming at your staff, if you're screaming at your partner, everyone's shutting down. They can't hear anything you're saying. And if you're screaming at someone on the internet, it's just kind of like, okay, well, thank you for that. I'm
Yeah.
now just moving on. Emotional intelligence is really that is how you can live in your blissful life. I mean, that's how you learn to recognize things. I literally remember the first time that I could hear my own inner monologue, and this was tools that I'd been learning from nonviolent communication. And I was driving to my studio back in the day when I had two separate studios. I was driving on a day that was supposed to be my day off to meet someone for a very inconsequential thing. And I'm like in traffic, and I have this internal monologue, like, I have to do this, I have to do this, I don't want to do this, I have to do this. And suddenly I just thought, who is telling me I have to do this? Just me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the boss. I can
Mm-hmm.
text that person right now and say, you know what? Something came up. I can't make our meeting. Let's do it another day. Thanks so much. And just, I was like, people cancel on me all the time. I don't hate on them. I'm just like, oh, I guess they were busy. No problem. And that was just like a game changer. Suddenly I was like, oh, I can protect my own time. I can hear this voice that I have that's constantly saying, I have to do these things, whether I want to or not, and start really thinking, well, what do I want to do? And I still struggle with that anytime I change my schedule or do things for myself, go away on vacation. Like I just did. I'm always like, oh, should I do that? I have guilt, all these things, but at least I can hear myself and be like, well, this is the conversation I always have. And 9 times out of 10, it works out fine. Everybody's fine. So
Always. You know what? Always is. And those are powerful words you were just saying, because I think some of the most powerful things that help us live in our bliss, as you say, is, really taking control of your life, standing in your power, but also letting go. Letting go will let you have probably, I learned that most of the stuff that we make a big deal in our life is not a big deal. Mm-hmm. Every time I want to make something a big deal, I sit back and I'm like, is this really a big deal to put my energy and attention to? Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times, a lot of the stuff is not in our control. So I only concentrate on stuff now, on things that are in my control. And there's so many things that are out of our control. Mm-hmm. So learning to let go has also let me live in my bliss, because a lot of times we're just like, no, we can't, I need to hold on, I need you to stay in my life, and this needs to happen. And sometimes it just doesn't. We drive ourselves crazy, we think we don't have to do anything. Actually, mm-hmm. We don't have to do anything at all.
And actually,
control.
I hear this in your story too, and I feel like I learned this also in the pandemic, because basically in the pandemic, the worst thing, the thing I was always afraid of happened. I always was afraid, what if the studio closes? What if the studio closes? That was my refrain. That was my like fear sentence constantly. If I do this, if I don't do this, what if the studio closes? And finally, I like had worked through that to a point where I was like, well, it would never happen overnight, right? So if it was coming to that point, right? Yeah, that's the joke. I'd gotten to this point.
Everybody, oh, no way.
Yeah, I'd gotten to this point where I've been like, well, if that was really happening, I'd see it coming, I'd make plans. Well, guess what? It happened overnight.
Literally overnight. And that's why, I think everyone has learned in some way or other, whether we put it into practice or not, is that having multiple streams of income, even streams of income that might not be exactly what you're doing.
Right.
But in times where, you don't feel like doing what you're doing, you don't have the amount of clients that you wish you had, always pulling from another source to keep you going.
Well, what I'm hearing is I think that you're saying you let go of what you can't control, and also you've built a resilience of understanding that you can also always fix things, come up with a plan, shift, be resilient, literally. And that was a huge lesson that I learned in the pandemic, because I was able to shift my life so much, and that's given me confidence when things are going badly or whatever, when something's out of my control and I'm just like, oh my God, this is so stressful. But I can take a step back and go, you know what I'm good at? I'm good at problem solving. I'm good at fixing things. So when that happens, I'm able to do that. Well, I just want to thank you so much for being here. And this is such a great conversation. I could do this all day, but
I
I don't want to take
know.
any more of your precious time.
Well, thank you for reaching out to me, and I appreciate you. Look at what your words started. I still get comments. I still get people liking your video. Like it's like in nonstop. And I think that, and I had this one woman in particular on TikTok, Stitch It. I had a lot of people, in fact, on Stitch It, and she was like, "This comment changed my life." Like the Sex and the City episode, or I can't remember what episode it was, where she's like, the person was just like, they just don't want to be with you anymore. Like you just have to be
Someone
okay.
wrote that to me too. They were like, it's the he's just not into you.
No, he's just not into you. And she goes,
yeah.
This is what this comment did for me. And it has literally changed my life. And then when people saw her do that, I think she got like over 10,000 views to be like, this is me. Because people have this in the back of their mind that I'm just not going to be this size, but we try to attain it every day because society makes us feel like that's what makes you feel beautiful. That's what makes you feel worthy. That is it. And until we come to terms with not all body types are supposed to be that way or can be that way, that's what set her free. And so I am so appreciative of your words. I'm so appreciative of them, not just because other people have resonated and learned from it, but I have as well, because when you said them, I was like, honey, honestly. And I'm not even the one who's trying to be skinny, right. But I knew that it had to be to more people who had to hear that message. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. And thank you for just being out there, being yourself so unapologetically, because that's inspiring to me. It's inspiring to everybody every day. How can people find you? And do you have anything coming up that people can reach out for?
Well, my name on Instagram and on TikTok is Uncomfortable_Bliss. And I'm working on a few projects that I can't name at the moment, but I'm definitely working on some stuff for Black History Month and already some stuff for June, which is in Pride Month. And I have personal projects that I want to talk about, but I can't talk about right now. But if you stay tuned on our platform, you will see them. And of course, like I said earlier, I am manifesting speaking in 2024 at as many places as I possibly can. I feel like it's something that I really, really want to do. So if anybody wants to reach out to me, I am here. You can DM me, email me, anything.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you, my love. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Have a great day.